"Ma'am, we can't hold the line for this." The teller pushed the old savings book back across the counter like it was something dirty, its faded red circle catching the fluorescent light. Marcus Reed stopped with his loan folder in one hand and Noah's small fingers gripping his sleeve. Behind the glass, Linda Brooks smiled like everything was under control. The guard stepped forward. Marcus tore his number ticket from his folder and held it out. "Serve her first. She was here before me." 3 hours earlier, Marcus had wiped concrete dust from the knees of his work pants in the parking lot of Carter Community Bank, but the gray powder would not come off. It clung to him the way long days did. His orange safety vest was folded over one arm, his hard hat hung from 2 fingers, and the brown envelope under his elbow held every paper he had been told to bring. Tax returns, job invoices, a signed construction contract, proof that he could repay what he was asking for if somebody would simply read past the way he looked. Noah walked beside him with his school backpack bouncing lightly against his shoulders. He was 9, old enough to notice when adults stared too long, young enough to still believe his father could fix anything with quiet hands and patience. The bank doors breathed open with a soft hiss. Cold air rolled over them. Inside, the lobby smelled of floor wax, printer ink, and expensive perfume from the woman in line ahead of them. A camera blinked red above the entrance. Numbers flashed on the screen over the teller stations. Marcus pulled ticket B42 from the machine and tucked it carefully into the front of his loan folder. Noah looked up at him. "Is this the one, Dad?" Marcus gave him a small nod. "This is the one we do right." They had not taken 3 steps before the room shifted. An old woman stood at the center teller window, shoulders narrow beneath a brown cardigan, both hands resting on a savings book so worn the corners curled upward. Her name, though Marcus did not know it yet, was Evelyn Carter. Her hair was tucked under a soft gray scarf, and her shoes looked polished but old, the kind a person kept because they still had dignity left in them. On the cover of her savings book was a red circle, drawn carefully around something faded. Not messy, not accidental. The teller barely looked at it. "This account will take time, ma'am. You'll need to wait." Evelyn's voice was thin but steady. "I have been waiting." A man in a navy suit behind Marcus sighed loudly. Linda Brooks came out from her office then, heels clicking across the polished tile, name badge shining, smile perfect. "Is there a problem?" she asked, though her eyes had already measured Evelyn's cardigan and Marcus's work boots. The teller lowered her voice. "She keeps asking to be served." Linda touched the counter lightly, as if calming a child. "Ma'am, we have active clients with scheduled business today. Please take a seat." The guard moved closer. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the old book. Noah tugged Marcus's sleeve and whispered, "Dad." She was first. Marcus looked down at his son, then at the number in his own hand. For 1 second, he thought of the contract deadline, the truck repair bill, the rent notice folded in his glove compartment. Then he stepped forward, placed B42 on the counter in front of Evelyn, and said, "Take mine." The lobby did not go silent. Not yet. But behind the glass wall of her office, Linda's smile thinned, and Evelyn's thumb slowly covered the red circle on the book, as if Marcus had just touched a secret he was never supposed to see. The lobby did not go silent after Marcus gave up his ticket, but the sound changed. Conversations lowered, shoes shifted on the polished tile, and the little red light on the security camera kept blinking above the entrance like it had seen something no one else wanted to admit. Evelyn Carter stood with Marcus's number ticket resting beside her old savings book, her thumb still covering the red circle on the faded cover. Linda Brooks looked from the ticket to Marcus's boots, then to Noah's small hand gripping his father's sleeve. "That was kind of you," she said, smiling just enough for the room to hear. "But unfortunately kindness does not change bank procedure." Marcus did not move. "She was here first. We understand. Then serve her. We will when her account is properly verified." Linda's voice stayed soft, smooth, and clean, the kind of voice that made unfair things sound like policy. She lifted the savings book with 2 fingers, not roughly, but carefully enough to show everyone she did not want to touch it too long. The red circle on the cover flashed once under the fluorescent light before she laid a bank brochure over it. Evelyn noticed. So did Marcus. Noah looked up, confused, because the number ticket his father had given away was still sitting there, unused, while the screen above the counters blinked to the next customer. B43. A man in a navy suit stepped forward immediately, tapping his phone against his palm. Finally, he muttered. The teller smiled at him before he even reached the counter. Marcus lowered his eyes to the ticket machine, then back to Evelyn's hands. He could feel the weight of his own folder under his arm, the brown envelope soft at the edges from being carried too many places by a man who could not afford to lose it. Linda turned toward him as if remembering he existed. Mr. Reed. Marcus Reed. Yes, Mr. Reed. You're here for a small business loan review. A construction equipment loan. I brought everything your office asked for. I'm sure you did. She glanced at his vest, folded over his arm, then at the gray cement dust on his pants. It was a small look, quick and practiced, but it landed hard. Independent contracting can be difficult to verify. Marcus held the folder out. My tax returns are in front. The signed job contract is behind them. Linda did not take it yet. We'll still need to determine whether this is stable income. It's work I've done for 15 years. Of course. She smiled again. But our risk policy requires documentation, not just work history. Behind Marcus, someone gave a quiet laugh through their nose. Noah heard it. His shoulders curled inward, and the hand on Marcus's sleeve tightened. A woman near the brochure stand whispered to her husband, not softly enough. He brought that child in here like it's going to help him get approved. Marcus felt Noah freeze beside him. He did not turn around. He did not shame the woman. He only shifted his folder to one hand and placed the other gently on the back of Noah's neck. His palm was warm, rough from brick dust and lumber, and steady. Stand tall, son, he murmured. You didn't do anything wrong. Noah swallowed and nodded, but his eyes stayed on the floor, where the white tiles reflected everyone's shoes. Polished loafers, shiny heels, Marcus's scuffed work boots, Evelyn's old black shoes with careful stitching along the sides. Linda finally accepted Marcus's folder and opened it on the counter as if she were doing him a favor. She flipped past the first page too quickly, then the second. The paper made sharp little sounds under her manicured fingers. You're requesting same-day preliminary approval? That's what I was told to request. By whom? Your loan officer, Mr. Hanley. I spoke with him last Thursday. Linda's smile tightened by one thread. Mr. Hanley is not in today. He said the file would be ready. Sometimes applicants misunderstand what they are told. The sentence was wrapped in politeness, but Marcus heard the blade inside it. So did Evelyn. Her chin lifted almost imperceptibly, and her fingers slid from the red circle on the savings book to the edge of Marcus's ticket, as if she were beginning to connect one kind of dismissal to another. Linda took a red stamp from beside the teller station and pressed it onto a pale yellow slip clipped to Marcus's folder. Manual review. The ink was too fresh, too bright, almost wet. Marcus looked at it for a second. You haven't reviewed it yet. That is what manual review means. No, ma'am. That's what you put on something after you see what's missing. The teller beside Linda stopped typing. The guard's radio crackled once at his shoulder and went quiet. Linda kept her face composed, but her fingers moved to cover the stamp the same way she had covered the red circle on Evelyn's savings book. Mr. Reed, we are trying to help you, but this branch has standards. We cannot rush every file because someone walks in with urgency. I didn't ask you to rush it. Marcus's voice stayed low. I asked you to read it. A few people looked over then. Not because he was loud, but because he was not. There was something heavier, in a calm man refusing to shrink. Noah looked up at his father's face, searching for anger and finding only restraint. Evelyn looked at Marcus too, and for the first time since she entered the bank, her tired eyes sharpened. Linda slid the folder back halfway across the counter. You may take a seat. We'll call you when we can. The screen chimed again. Another customer number appeared. Not Evelyn's. Not Marcus's. Linda turned toward the man in the navy suit and said warmly, Mr. Collins, We're ready for you in the private office. Marcus watched the door open for a man who had arrived after them, watched Evelyn's old savings book remain trapped beneath a glossy brochure, and then noticed something small that did not fit. The manual review stamp on his file had already been dated before Linda ever opened the first page. Marcus kept his eyes on the red stamp for one quiet second longer than Linda expected. The date was already there, pressed cleanly into the corner of the yellow slip before she had touched his tax returns, before she had looked at the signed contract, before she had seen the payment history folded behind the loan officer's checklist. He did not say what he noticed. He only slid the folder back toward himself, placed 2 fingers on the edge of the paper so it would not wrinkle, and lowered his voice. "I'll wait." Linda gave the smallest breath through her nose, the kind that did not sound rude enough to accuse but not kind enough to miss. "That may take a while. Then we'll wait, right?" Noah looked at him. "Dad, what does that mean?" Marcus tucked the folder under his arm and guided him toward the row of chairs along the wall. "It means we don't let a hard room make us hard." The sentence was quiet, almost too quiet for anyone else to hear, but Evelyn heard it. She was still standing near the counter, her old savings book partly hidden under the glossy brochure Linda had laid over it, as if a picture of smiling homeowners could cover what was happening in front of them. The bank screen chimed again. Another number. Another person who had come later. Marcus pulled 2 chairs forward, one for Noah and one for Evelyn, then stayed standing beside them because there were not enough empty seats. "Ma'am," he said to Evelyn, "you can sit here." Evelyn looked at the chair, then at him. "You already gave me your number. A number's just paper. Not when you needed it." Marcus glanced at Noah before answering, and the boy saw the pause. It was small, but children notice the places adults try to hide pain. "Need doesn't make wrong right," Marcus said. Evelyn sat down slowly, one hand braced on the armrest, the other still on the book. Her fingers trembled more now, and the edge of the brochure slipped, showing the faded red circle again. Noah watched it the way a child watches a strange mark on a treasure map, curious but careful. From the counter, Linda leaned close to the teller and murmured something. The teller's eyes flicked toward Marcus and Evelyn, then away. Marcus saw that too. He saw almost everything, not because he was looking for trouble, but because years of job sites had taught him that small things warned you before big things broke. A hairline crack in concrete, a beam set a 1/4 inch off, a nail sticking up where a child might step. He had made a life from noticing what other people stepped over. Noah unzipped his backpack and pulled out a small pack of peanut butter crackers, the last snack Marcus had put in there that morning. He looked at his father. Marcus did not ask. He only gave a little nod. Noah stood, walked to Evelyn, and held the crackers out with both hands. "You can have these if you want. They're not crushed much." Evelyn's mouth opened like she wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. "That is very generous, young man." Noah shrugged, suddenly shy. "Dad says hungry people don't always say they're hungry." Linda saw it from across the lobby and gave a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. To her, it was probably nothing. A poor man teaching his son to give away a snack they might need later. Sweet, maybe. Foolish, surely. Marcus could almost feel the judgment pass over them like cold air. He did not chase it. He bent instead to pick up Evelyn's savings book when it slipped from her lap and tapped the floor with a soft, tired sound. The book landed face down near his. Boot. The cover had come loose at one corner, and a gray smear of floor dust marked the red circle. Marcus picked it up carefully, not by the pages, but with his palm under the spine, the way he handled old family Bibles at church when someone asked him to move a box. He brushed the dust away with his thumb. Beneath the worn edge, along the cracked spine, a faint line of lettering appeared where the cover had peeled. Founders Community Savings Program. The words were faded, almost swallowed by age, but they were there. Marcus read only enough to know he should not read more. He closed the book gently and handed it back. "Here you go, ma'am." Evelyn's fingers closed around it, but her eyes stayed on his face. "You didn't open it. Wasn't mine to open." For the first time, Evelyn's composure shifted. Not a reveal, not a confession, just a stillness, deeper than before, as if she had been waiting all day for one person to understand that ownership and dignity were not the same thing. Marcus sat on the edge of Noah's chair arm for half a second, then stood again when an elderly man with a cane came near. He moved without being asked, giving space, making room, disappearing a little so others could be comfortable. That was how he survived most rooms. That was how he had survived after his wife died, after the casserole stopped coming, after people stopped asking how he was and started telling him how strong he must be. He had learned to measure grief in school lunches packed before sunrise, in rent notices opened after Noah went to bed, in work gloves washed at midnight so his son would not smell concrete dust at breakfast. He had learned that dignity was not the same as winning. Sometimes dignity was letting your child see you refuse to become cruel. Across the lobby, the teller picked up Marcus's folder again and whispered, "Linda, the checklist looks complete." Linda's hand came down gently over the folder. Too gently. "Not here," she said, smiling toward the room as if nothing had happened. Evelyn heard those two words. Marcus did too. And when Evelyn looked down at the old savings book in her lap, her thumb no longer covered the red circle. It rested beside the faded words on the spine, as if Marcus's simple act of returning what was not his had uncovered the first piece of a truth the bank had tried very hard not to serve. The words "not here" did not leave the air. They stayed between the teller's lowered eyes and Linda Brooks's polished smile, hanging there with the smell of floor wax and printer toner, with the red manual review stamp still drying on Marcus Reed's folder and Evelyn Carter's old savings book resting in her lap like something the bank wanted to forget. Marcus did not move toward the counter. He did not accuse anyone. He only watched the way Linda's hand stayed flat over his file, not pressing hard enough to look guilty, just firm enough to stop the teller from turning another page. Evelyn watched too. Her thumb rested beside the faded words on the cracked spine of her savings book, Founders Community Savings Program, and for the first time her face held something sharper than patience. Linda turned from the teller and faced the lobby with that careful branch manager warmth that made every sentence sound rehearsed. "Mr. Reed," she said, "I'm going to ask you to please avoid handling another customer's private banking materials." Noah's head snapped up. He just picked it up. Marcus placed one hand lightly on his son's shoulder before the boy could say more. "It's all right." "But Dad, it's all right." Noah closed his mouth, but his face did not believe it. Linda's smile softened as if she were comforting them, but her eyes stayed cool. "We appreciate good intentions. However, privacy matters here. We can't have customers passing account documents around the lobby." The way she said it made the room turn slightly against Marcus. Not openly, not with outrage, just with glances. The navy-suited man in the private office doorway looked out as if Marcus had been caught doing something improper. A woman by the brochure stand shifted her purse to her other shoulder. The guard looked from Marcus to Evelyn's savings book, uncertain now, because Linda had made kindness sound like interference. Marcus felt Noah shrink beside him, and that hurt more than the accusation. Still, he kept his voice low. "I didn't open her book. No one said you did. You implied it." Linda paused, just long enough for the fluorescent lights to hum louder. Then she turned to Evelyn. "Ma'am, did Mr. Reed look inside your savings book?" Evelyn lifted her eyes slowly. She could have ended it there. She could have exposed Linda's tone, or corrected the room, or said more than anyone expected her to know. Instead, she looked at Marcus, then at Noah, then down at the old book in her lap. "He returned what fell," she said. "That is all." Linda's jaw tightened for only a second. Of course. Renee, the young teller, stood at her station with Marcus's folder still half open beneath Linda's hand. The checklist on top showed every box marked in blue ink. Tax returns, contract, proof of insurance, payment history, identification. But the yellow slip stamped manual review sat crooked over it like a warning sign placed in front of a clean road. Marcus looked at the stamp again, then at the digital clock above the teller line. 10:18 a.m. The ink on the stamp had been there since he first saw it, wet but already dated. Something about that bothered him the same way a support beam bothered him when it was straight to the eye but wrong to the level. "Ma'am," he said. Linda turned back. Yes, Mr. Reed? He pointed not at her, not at the file, but at the yellow slip. What time was that review opened? Excuse me? The manual review. What time did you open it? A small sound went through the teller station, not loud enough to call a gasp, just a breath caught and quickly swallowed. Linda's smile did not move. Our internal process is not something we discuss in the lobby. I'm not asking for your internal process. I'm asking when you opened my review. After receiving your file. Marcus nodded once, as if the answer had weight. Before or after I handed it to you? The guard's radio crackled again, then went quiet. Renee looked down at the keyboard. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the savings book. Linda gave a brief professional laugh, the kind meant to make the question seem unnecessary. Mr. Reed, you are clearly under stress, and I understand that. Loan applications can be emotional. Marcus did not rise to it. He only shifted half a step so the overhead light fell across the yellow slip. The stamp mark glistened at the edge, but the date line underneath had a faint black print above it, the kind a system generated before a human stamp ever touched the page. Noah leaned forward, squinting with the seriousness of a child trying to help without understanding the danger. Dad, he whispered. That paper was already on there when she opened the folder. Marcus did not look down at him. I know. Linda heard it. Her hand moved quickly, too quickly, sliding the yellow slip under the first page of the folder. We'll take this into the back for proper review. At that same moment, Renee reached for Evelyn's savings book. I can try the account scan again, she said, barely above a whisper. Linda's head turned. That won't be necessary. The system asked for a second scan. Renee. One word. Soft. Controlled. Final. But Renee had already pulled the book closer. The cracked spine gave a small dry sound as she opened it only far enough to scan the code printed along the inside flap. The scanner beeped once. The computer screen flickered. For less than 2 seconds, a blue alert filled the lower corner. Legacy account. Do not dismiss. Renee froze. Evelyn saw it. Marcus saw it reflected in the glass panel beside the counter. Reversed but clear enough. Linda stepped in front of the monitor, blocking the camera angle from the lobby and the eyes of everyone behind her. It's an old account flag, she said quickly. Nothing important. Evelyn's voice came quiet from the chair. If it's nothing, why did you close the screen so fast? The lobby held its breath. Linda looked at Evelyn then, really looked at her for the first time and made one small mistake. Mrs. Carter, I assure you. She stopped, but the name had already left her mouth. Marcus's eyes moved from Linda to the old savings book, from the red circle on its cover to the hidden alert on the screen, and he realized the first clue was not that the bank did not know who Evelyn was. It was that Linda might have known just enough to be afraid. For 1 second after Linda said, Mrs. Carter, nobody seemed to know where to look. The name had slipped out too cleanly to be an accident and stopped too quickly to be harmless. Evelyn sat perfectly still, the old savings book closed beneath both hands. Marcus did not chase the mistake. He did not smile at it, did not use it like a weapon, did not even repeat it. He only watched Linda's face the way he watched wet concrete when the surface looked smooth but something underneath had shifted. Linda recovered first. I apologize, she said, her voice warm again, almost motherly. I must have misread the account header. Renee looked down at the keyboard. The blue alert was gone now, swallowed behind a blank transaction screen, but her fingers hovered above the keys like she was afraid to touch anything else. Evelyn lifted her chin. You misread my name before you read my account? Linda gave a small professional laugh. These old records can display archived information in unusual ways. That is exactly why we need to handle this privately. Privately, Marcus said, not loudly. Linda turned to him. Yes, Mr. Reed. Privately. For the customer's protection. Marcus nodded once. Then protect her by serving her in order. The line was simple, but it changed the room. A chair leg scraped near the waiting area and then stopped halfway. The man in the navy suit lowered his phone. The air conditioner hummed above them with a steady mechanical breath, suddenly louder because the whispers had thinned. Linda kept her smile, but one hand slid Marcus's folder farther from the edge of the counter. "Mr. Reed, I understand you want to be helpful, but you are not part of this transaction. I became part of it when you took my number and still skipped her." Noah glanced at the number screen. B46 now. His father's B42 lay on the counter beside Evelyn's savings book, untouched. "Dad," he whispered. "They passed it again." Marcus looked at the screen and then back at Linda. He did not need to explain what a 9-year-old had already seen. Linda reached for a printed appointment form from a tray beside the teller window. "Here is what we are going to do. We will schedule Mrs. Carter for a follow-up account verification, and we will schedule you for a loan review next week. That gives everyone proper time." She slid the paper toward Marcus with 2 fingers. The paper smelled faintly of warm toner. "Next week loses my contract," Marcus said. "I explained that when I called. We cannot be responsible for outside deadlines. You can be responsible for what you write down." Linda blinked. "Excuse me?" Marcus placed his palm flat on the counter, beside the appointment form, not touching her, not crowding her. His hand was broad and rough, the nails clean but scarred at the edges from years of brick, pipe, and wood. "If you're moving my file to next week, please write the reason." Linda's smile finally thinned. "The reason is incomplete documentation." Marcus opened his folder himself, slowly, so no one could say he was waving papers around. He laid the checklist under the overhead light. Tax returns, proof of insurance, signed contract, bank statements, driver's license, business registration. Each box had a blue check from the loan officer Marcus had spoken to before. "Which one is incomplete?" The teller's fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. Renee looked at the list, then at Linda. Evelyn looked at Marcus, not with surprise exactly, but with the quiet recognition of someone seeing dignity turn into discipline. Linda picked up a pen. "Mr. Reed, you may not understand how underwriting works." Marcus looked at her, steady. "Maybe not all of it, but I understand a checklist." The words landed harder than they should have because they were not angry. They were clean. They left no room for pity. Linda wrote on the appointment form in quick, controlled strokes, "Applicant incomplete." Then she pushed it toward him. "There." Marcus did not pick it up right away. He looked at the phrase, then at the completed checklist, then at the yellow manual review slip that had been dated too early. "Would you initial that?" Linda's pen paused. "Why?" "Because that statement says my file is incomplete." He tapped the checklist once. "And this says it isn't." The lobby quieted again. Not silence yet, but the kind of waiting silence that comes before a floor gives way. Linda leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I am trying not to embarrass you in front of your son." Marcus's face did not change, but Noah's did. The boy's eyes flashed with hurt, then confusion, then something like shame before Marcus's hand found his shoulder again. "You don't have to worry about embarrassing me," Marcus said. "Just write the truth." Evelyn's fingers moved over the red circle on her savings book. Slow, deliberate, a test no one had been told they were taking. Then she spoke, soft enough that the people nearest had to lean in. "Miss Brooks, could you also write why my number was passed 3 times? Linda's eyes moved to her sharply. "Ma'am, your account required verification." "Then write that. There is no need to make this formal." "Why not?" Evelyn asked. "You said it was procedure." For the first time, Linda did not answer right away. Behind the counter, Renee swallowed and looked toward the small printer beside her station. Marcus saw the movement. So did Evelyn. "Renee," Linda said gently, warning hidden under sweetness. "We are not printing anything until I approve it." Renee's voice came out thin. The system already logged the queue changes. Linda's head turned slowly. "What did you say?" Renee's face lost color, but she did not take the words back. "When a number is skipped manually, it logs who did it. The service log records it." The air seemed to drain out of the lobby. Even the man in the navy suit stopped shifting his weight. Linda gave a careful little smile. "That is internal data. It can be reviewed later." Marcus did not reach for the printer. He did not tell Renee what to do. He only looked at the young teller and said, "Don't carry what isn't yours." Renee's eyes flicked to him, wet at the edges. It was not permission. It was not pressure. It was a way out. Her hand moved to the keyboard. Linda stepped closer. "Renee." Evelyn placed her savings book on the counter. The red circle faced up. "Print mine first," she said. Linda's polite mask held, but now everyone could see the strain behind it. Renee pressed one key. The printer clicked, then whirred, spitting out a thin strip of paper that curled at the end. The sound was small, almost ridiculous, but it hit the room. Like a gavel. Renee tore the page free and laid it on the counter. Marcus did not touch it. Evelyn did. Her eyes moved down the printed lines. B39 skipped. B42 transferred. B43 priority override. B44 private office. B42 manual delay. The proof was not dramatic. It did not shout. It was just black ink on white paper, the kind of thing a person could not argue with without sounding afraid of the truth. Linda looked at the service log, then at the camera above the teller line, then back at Evelyn's savings book. "This still does not explain the nature of the account," she said, trying to pull the room back under control. Evelyn folded the service log once and held it against the old book. "No," she said quietly, "but it explains the nature of this branch." Marcus looked from the printed log to the faded words along the cracked spine, Founders Community Savings Program, and understood that the paper had opened a door bigger than his loan, bigger than Evelyn's place in line, bigger than one red stamp on one folder. Somewhere inside that bank system, someone had been keeping track all along. The service log stayed on the counter between Evelyn's old savings book and Marcus Reed's loan folder, thin as a receipt and heavy as a sworn statement. Nobody reached for it at first. The printer had stopped whirring, but the room still seemed to hear it, that small mechanical confession breathing out of the machine in black ink. B39 skipped. B42 transferred. B43 priority override. B44 private office. B42 manual delay. Marcus looked at the lines and felt the shape of the truth widening under his feet. It was no longer only about his ticket. It was no longer only about Evelyn's place in line. The numbers showed a pattern, and patterns were harder to bury than insults. Linda Brooks kept her smile, but now it rested on her face like something held there by force. "This is being taken out of context," she said. "Q adjustments happen every day in banking." "Then it should not be hard to explain them," Evelyn replied. Her voice was still gentle, but the paper in her hand did not tremble anymore. Linda reached for the service log. "I'll keep that with the branch records." Evelyn did not pull it away sharply. She simply laid her palm over it. "It already is a branch record." A man near the brochure stand lowered his newspaper. Renee stood behind the teller station as if she had stepped onto a floor that might crack beneath her. The guard looked up at the camera over the lobby, then down at the log, and something in his face changed from obedience to memory. Marcus saw it. He had seen that look on job sites when one worker finally realized the unsafe ladder had not been an accident but a habit. Linda turned toward him quickly. "Mr. Reed, I understand that you are frustrated, but I would caution you against encouraging staff to mishandle internal documents." Marcus's jaw moved once. He could have answered hard. He could have pointed to the wet stamp, to the dated slip, to the fact that his file had been marked before it had been read. He could have said what everyone was beginning to see. Instead, he looked at Renee, whose hands were folded tight at her waist. "I didn't ask her to do anything but tell the truth. That is not your role here." "Maybe not." Marcus touched Noah's shoulder. "But my son is in this room, and I won't teach him that silence is the price of being treated decent." Noah looked up, breathing a little easier, as if his father had put a wall between him and the shame people kept trying to hand him. Evelyn heard the sentence and looked down at the red circle on the old savings book. For 1 second, grief passed through her eyes. Not surprise, grief, as if she had heard that same kind of sentence in a different voice, from a different time, inside the same institution that now stood polished and cold around them. The front doors opened with a hiss. Two people in dark suits stepped in, not customers, not dressed for deposits or withdrawals. One carried a slim laptop case. The other wore a badge clipped low on his jacket that read Internal Review. Linda saw them, and her composure slipped just enough for Marcus to catch the first real flash of fear. Her hand went to her phone. She turned slightly away from the lobby, but the glass wall of her office reflected her face back at everyone. "We were not expecting you until afternoon," she said, voice lower now. The man with the badge looked at the service log on the counter, then at the old savings book. Plans changed. Linda's smile came back too quickly. "Of course. Let me bring you into my office so I can brief you properly." Evelyn remained seated. "No," she said. The word was quiet, but it stopped Linda more completely than if someone had shouted. Linda turned. "Mom." Evelyn rested the savings book on the counter. The faded red circle faced the ceiling. The cracked spine showed those faint words again. Founders Community Savings Program. "If this concerns how customers are served," she said, "then it can begin where the customers were served." The internal reviewer looked at her more closely. His eyes dropped to the book, then to the red circle, then to the spine. Something almost like recognition crossed his face, but he did not speak it. Not yet. Linda stepped between him and the counter, not dramatically, not enough for most people to call it blocking, but Marcus noticed the angle of her body. She put herself in front of the book and the camera at the same time. "This customer has an archived account flag," Linda said. "Likely an old record from a discontinued community product. We were already handling it." "You were sending her away," Noah said. The words came out small but clear. Marcus looked down. "Noah." The boy swallowed. "I'm sorry." Evelyn turned toward him. "Don't be sorry for remembering what happened." Linda's eyes sharpened. "We are not going to involve a child in a banking procedure." Marcus's voice stayed calm. "Then don't make him watch adults lie." The room stilled deeper than before. The air conditioner clicked, paused, and started again. The internal reviewer looked at Marcus for the first time, not with warmth, not with pity, but with professional attention. "Sir, what is your name?" "Marcus Reed." "And you were number B42? Marcus nodded toward the ticket on the counter. "Still am, far as I know." The reviewer looked at Renee. "Pull the queue history." Linda moved fast. "I can provide that after I gather the necessary context." "Now," Evelyn said. Again the word was soft. Again it carried more authority than it should have from someone the room had tried to ignore. Renee looked from Linda to the reviewer, then to the keyboard. Her fingers trembled, but this time they moved. The computer clicked through screens. The little printer warmed again, smelling of hot plastic and toner. Linda's phone vibrated in her hand. She glanced down, and Marcus saw only the first line of a message before she turned the screen inward. "Is she still in lobby?" Linda locked the phone instantly. The printer began again. One sheet, then another, then a third. Renee tore them free and laid them side by side under the counter light. Queue history. Manual overrides. Applicant status changes. The first sheet showed Evelyn's number skipped 3 times. The second showed Marcus's B42 transferred into delay after he handed it to Evelyn. The third showed his loan status changed to applicant incomplete at 10:03 a.m., 15 minutes before Linda opened his folder in front of him. The reviewer placed his hand on the counter and leaned in. "Who entered this status?" Renee's voice barely carried. "Branch manager credentials." Linda let out a controlled breath. "That is misleading. We often pre-stage files to manage workflow." "Pre-stage," Marcus repeated. Just one word. Not accusation. Measurement. Linda looked at him with a calm that had begun to crack at the edges. "Mr. Reed, please allow professionals to handle this." Evelyn touched the red circle on her book. Professionals are exactly who should have handled it before a father and a child had to. No one answered. The reviewer picked up Evelyn's savings book at last, but unlike Linda, he did not touch it with reluctance. He handled it with both hands. He opened the front cover carefully. Inside, beneath an old account number and a faded bank seal, was a signature written in dark blue ink that had browned with time. The reviewer's face changed. He did not say the name, but his eyes moved toward the framed portrait on the far wall near Linda's office. Carter Community Bank, founded 1978. Harold Carter. The signature in the book matched the name beneath the portrait. Evelyn closed her eyes for half a second, and when she opened them, the patience was still there, but beneath it was pain. Marcus saw then that the book was not just an account. It was memory. Linda reached for it. That document is extremely old. We should secure it before it is damaged. The reviewer did not hand it over. We need the original preserved. Linda's voice dropped. This is becoming unnecessary. No, Marcus said quietly, looking at his folder, then the log, then Evelyn's book. This is becoming clear. He did not say it to hurt her. He said it because the room had reached the place where pretending became more dangerous than truth. Evelyn looked at him once, and this time her expression held something like thanks, but also a warning. Not yet. Not all of it. Through the front glass, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The internal reviewer's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and straightened. Linda saw the car, saw the reviewer's posture, and all the color drained from the careful smile she had worn since morning. We should move this to my office, she said quickly. Evelyn rose slowly from her chair, one hand on the counter, the old savings book now lying open beneath the lights beside Marcus's delayed file and the printed service logs. No, she said for the third time. It started here. The glass doors opened, and every piece of paper on the counter seemed to wait with them, too heavy now to be handled behind a closed door. The black sedan stopped outside Carter Community Bank, and the lobby seemed to arrange itself around the sound of its doors closing. Through the front glass, Marcus Reed saw a tall man in a charcoal suit step onto the sidewalk, followed by a woman carrying a tablet and another man with a leather folder pressed flat against his chest. They did not rush. That made it worse. People who still had control never needed to rush. Linda Brooks moved first, smoothing the front of her blazer with both hands. Everyone, please remain calm, she said, although no one had made a sound. This is a routine internal matter, and I want to make sure our customers are not disturbed by incomplete information. Marcus stood beside Noah, one hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder. He could feel the tension in his son's small frame, the way Noah leaned closer without meaning to. Evelyn Carter remained near the counter, the old savings book open under the lights, the red circle on its cover visible beside the service logs and Marcus's loan folder. The internal reviewer stepped back just enough to make room. The glass doors opened, and Daniel Carter entered the bank his family name had built. His eyes moved across the lobby once, not emotionally, not warmly, but like a man trained to read a room before speaking inside it. He saw the waiting customers. He saw the teller frozen at her station. He saw Linda standing too close to the counter. He saw Marcus in work clothes with his son at his side. And then, for half a second, his eyes touched Evelyn's old savings book. Something in his face tightened, but he did not speak. Linda crossed the floor toward him quickly, heels clicking too fast now. Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. I was just about to brief internal review in my office. We had a minor service misunderstanding involving an archived account and an applicant who became understandably emotional about a delayed file. The word emotional landed near Marcus like a quiet insult wrapped in velvet. He did not answer it. Noah looked up at him, waiting to see if he should be afraid. Marcus only gave his shoulder a steady squeeze. Daniel did not look away from Linda. In the office? Yes, Linda said. For privacy. Evelyn's voice came from the counter, calm and worn at the edges. Privacy did not concern anyone when I was told to sit at the back. The lobby shifted. A woman near the brochure stand lowered her eyes. The man in the navy suit in the private office doorway stepped back as if trying to become less visible. Linda turned with a soft, wounded smile. Ma'am, with respect, you were never mistreated. Your account required verification. Mr. Reed inserted himself into your transaction, which created confusion, and my staff attempted to de-escalate. There it was. Clean story. Professional story. A story with Marcus positioned as the problem and Evelyn as a confused old woman. For a moment it almost worked. Daniel's gaze moved to Marcus, measuring him. A black single father in cement-dusted pants, hard hat on the chair beside him, lone folder worn soft from being carried. A man who looked tired. A man people were ready to misunderstand. Marcus met his eyes without challenge. "I didn't come here to make trouble," he said. "I came to ask the bank to read my paperwork. She came before me. That's all I said." Linda gave a small sigh, not loud enough to be rude, just loud enough to suggest patience. "Mr. Reed, that is not the full context." Daniel lifted one hand. "Then we'll build the full context." The words quieted the room. He turned to the internal reviewer. "Start with the cue." The reviewer laid the first sheet flat on the counter. The service log. The thin paper curled at the end, still warm from the printer. Customer number B39 skipped. B42 transferred. B43 priority override. B44 private office. B42 manual delay. Linda stepped closer. Queue adjustments are normal. VIP clients with scheduled business are handled differently. That log alone does not prove wrongdoing. It was the first retention spike, and Marcus felt it ripple through the room. A few faces changed, uncertain again. The navy-suited man straightened a little, as if he might be rescued by policy. Daniel nodded once, not accepting, not rejecting. Who was B42? Marcus looked at the ticket still lying beside Evelyn's savings book. "I was." Noah stepped half a step forward, still behind his father's arm, and pointed at the small paper. "That was Dad's. He gave it to her." His voice was quiet, but because the room had gone careful, everyone heard it. Marcus did not let him move farther. He kept his hand at Noah's back. Daniel looked at the ticket, then at the screen above the teller windows, then at Linda. Was Mrs. Carter served using B42? Linda's lips parted, then closed. The account required separate verification. "That is not what I asked." No one moved. The air conditioning clicked on overhead. The second piece came forward. The queue history, printed in neat black lines. It confirmed what the service log had started. B42 had been manually delayed after Marcus transferred it. Evelyn's original number had been skipped. More than once. The system had not failed. Someone had used it. Linda folded her hands in front of her. "Again, Mr. Carter, without context, system entries can appear harsher than reality. My team was trying to prevent fraud. An old savings book, an unclear account flag, a customer unable to verify quickly, and a loan applicant hovering over the transaction. Those factors require caution. It was reasonable. Too reasonable. A few people could breathe inside it. Fraud. Protection. Caution. Words that made harm look responsible. Marcus looked at Evelyn then. She did not appear offended. She looked tired in a way that went deeper than age. Marcus could have said Linda knew her name. He could have pushed the mistake into the center of the room. But he remembered Evelyn's warning glance in part 6. That quiet "not yet." So he waited. Daniel turned to Renee. "Show me the account alert." Renee's face drained. Linda moved immediately. Renee is very new. She may have misread an archived prompt. Daniel's voice stayed even. "Then we will read it with her." Renee's fingers trembled as she returned to her terminal. The blue glow of the screen reflected in her eyes. She scanned Evelyn's savings book again. The old spine made that dry cracking sound. The scanner beeped. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Linda almost relaxed. Then the lower corner of the screen flashed blue. Legacy account, do not dismiss. The room did not gasp. Tightened. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Linda's face changed by less than an inch. "Old accounts carry old language," she said quickly. "This branch services thousands of customers. We cannot treat every archive flag like an emergency." Marcus looked at the monitor, then at the camera dome above the teller line. The black glass of it reflected Linda standing between the screen and the lobby. He remembered the way she had stepped there before. Camera saw the screen, he said. Just 5 words. Daniel turned toward him. Marcus nodded once toward the ceiling. When she closed it the first time, it was the second retention spike. Linda's explanation did not collapse, but it cracked where everyone could hear it. The internal reviewer looked up at the camera, then at the tablet in his colleague's hand. Daniel did not raise his voice. Pull the lobby feed from the first scan. Linda stepped in. Mr. Carter, I strongly recommend we review footage privately to protect customer information. Mute the audio. Blur account numbers. Keep the actions visible. The woman with the tablet nodded and began working. The lobby waited. A child coughed somewhere near the back. A chair creaked. Marcus felt Noah's fingers slip into his, and he held on. He was not walking into victory. He was standing in the same room that had tried to make him small, hoping the truth would be strong enough without him needing to become loud. The tablet connected to the wall display near the manager's office, the same screen that usually played quiet ads about community loans and first homes. Now it showed the lobby from above. Evelyn entering with her savings book. The teller pushing it back. Marcus stepping forward, his ticket sliding across the counter. Linda covering the red circle with a brochure. The screen changed angles. Linda stamping manual review before opening Marcus's file. Linda moving in front of Renee's monitor when the first blue alert appeared. Linda sliding the yellow slip under the page. The footage had no sound, but it did not need any. Linda's mouth opened. This still does not prove intent. Daniel said nothing. The internal reviewer placed the third document on the counter. Marcus's applicant status change. Applicant incomplete. Time entered. 10:03 a.m. Daniel looked at Marcus's folder. When did she open your file? Renee answered before Linda could. After 10:18. Linda turned on her. Renee. The young teller flinched, but did not take it back. Marcus looked at her and gave the smallest nod. Not praise, not pressure, only recognition. Daniel reached for Marcus's folder at last. He opened it under the same fluorescent light where Linda had dismissed it. Tax returns, contract, insurance, payment history, business registration, blue checks on every line. Marcus felt Noah press closer to him, hope and fear mixing in the boy's grip. Linda's voice softened again, almost pleading now. Mr. Carter, I was protecting the branch. From risk. Daniel looked at the completed checklist, then at the premature incomplete status, then at the old savings book still open beside it. Risk to whom? Linda had no answer ready. Evelyn lifted one hand and placed it gently on the cover of the book, red circle under her fingertips. She still had not told the room who she was. She still had not claimed power. She had made them follow the evidence first. Daniel's eyes moved to the first page inside the savings book, where the faded signature waited beneath the old bank seal. His hand slowed. The internal reviewer saw it too. The portrait of Harold Carter watched from the wall in its brass frame. Daniel looked from the signature to the portrait, and all at once the public confrontation stood on the edge of something much larger. He reached for the book with both hands, and Evelyn finally raised her eyes to him as if giving permission for the last truth to enter the room. Daniel Carter lifted the old savings book with both hands, and the final proof lay open beneath the fluorescent lights. On one side was the faded bank seal from 1978. On the other was the signature from the first page, written in dark blue ink that had browned with time. Harold Carter. The same name was etched on the brass plate beneath the founder's portrait on Linda Brooks's wall. For a moment, Daniel did not speak. His thumb moved over the edge of the page, careful not to touch the ink, and the whole lobby seemed to lean toward the silence. The wall display still held the frozen camera image of Marcus sliding his ticket across the counter to Evelyn. B42, the number that had been delayed, transferred, ignored, and finally turned into a witness. Daniel looked from the signature to the red circle on the cover, then to the woman standing beside the counter. Evelyn Carter's shoulders were straight now, though her hands were still old, still veined, still holding the weight of the morning. "Mom," Daniel said. The word was not loud. It did not need to be. It passed through the lobby like the sound of glass cracking in a quiet room. The teller stopped breathing through her mouth. The man in the navy suit lowered his eyes. A pen slipped from Linda's fingers and struck the tile with a tiny plastic click that sounded impossibly sharp. Noah's hand tightened around Marcus's. "Dad," he whispered, almost afraid to ask the question the whole room had already heard answered. Marcus did not look away from Evelyn. He only squeezed his son's fingers once, slow and steady. Linda's face changed by inches, not all at once. First the color drained from her cheeks. Then her lips parted. Then her eyes moved to the camera dome above the teller line, as if the machine itself had betrayed her. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice dry now. "I had no idea." Evelyn turned toward her. That was the point. No one moved. The air conditioner clicked off, and in the sudden absence of its hum, the soft buzz of the fluorescent lights became audible. Daniel placed the savings book on the counter beside Marcus's folder and the printed service logs. He did not raise his voice. That made it heavier. "You did not know she was my mother," he said. "But you knew she was a customer." Linda swallowed. The account was unusual. Daniel looked at the service log. "So you skipped her." "We were verifying." "You skipped her 3 times. He turned one page. "You delayed Mr. Reed's number after he gave it to her." Linda's hand reached for the edge of the counter, not to take anything now, only to steady herself. Daniel opened Marcus's file fully. "And you marked his application incomplete at 10:03. He looked at Renee. "When was this folder first opened in front of him?" Renee's voice trembled, but it held. "After 10:18. Daniel nodded, then looked down at the checklist. Tax returns, contract, insurance, payment history, business registration. Every box was marked. Every required document was there. Marcus felt Noah shift beside him, and for the first time that morning, the boy's breathing eased. Not because money had appeared, not because anyone had promised them a miracle, because the truth was finally standing where shame had been. Linda tried again, softer now, almost pleading. "Mr. Carter, I was protecting the institution from risk." Daniel's eyes lifted. "Risk to the institution is not a man in work boots asking us to read his paperwork." The words moved through the lobby slowly. Marcus looked down at his boots, the cement dust still caught in the seams. He could feel people looking too, but the looks had changed. They were no longer weighing him. They were weighing what they had assumed. Daniel turned toward the wall display. "Play the timeline again." The woman with the tablet tapped the screen. The footage moved silently. Evelyn at the counter. The teller pushing the old savings book back. Linda covering the red circle with a brochure. Marcus stepping forward, his ticket sliding across the counter. Noah standing close enough to see everything. Linda stamping manual review before opening the file. Linda blocking Renee's monitor when the legacy account alert flashed. Linda sliding the yellow slip under the page. The room watched without sound. That was what broke it. Not a speech. Not an accusation. Just their own mourning, returned to them without excuses. When the footage stopped, Daniel faced the room. "This branch will preserve all footage from today. Internal review will audit every manually delayed customer file from the past 12 months. Any file marked incomplete without documented cause will be reopened." Linda closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, there was nowhere safe to look. Daniel continued, "Ms. Brooks, you are relieved of branch authority pending investigation." No one clapped. No one cheered. It was not that kind of justice. It was quieter, cleaner, and harder to escape. The guard lowered his chin. Renee pressed both hands against the edge of her station as if she might cry but refused to do it while standing in uniform. Evelyn reached for the savings book and closed it gently, red circle facing up. Then she turned to Marcus. "Only one person in this room served me before knowing my name." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, as if praise fit him worse than humiliation. "Ma'am, I just gave you a number." Evelyn's eyes softened. "No, Mr. Reed. You gave this room a measure." Noah looked up at his father then, wide-eyed, proud, Still too young to understand policy or audit logs, but old enough to understand that his dad had not been small. Daniel stepped closer to Marcus and held out the loan folder, not as a gift, not as charity, but as something that should never have been taken from fairness. Your application will be reviewed today by an independent officer. Based on the checklist, it should have been reviewed this morning. Marcus accepted the folder with both hands. His voice stayed low. I don't want special treatment. Daniel nodded. You won't get it. You'll get the treatment you were owed. That was when the lobby finally went fully silent. Not stunned by wealth. Not frozen by power. Silenced by the simple shame of seeing how long it had taken to do the right thing. Marcus looked at Evelyn, then at Noah, then at the old ticket B42 still lying on the counter, bent at one corner from all the hands and fear it had passed through. He picked it up, smoothed it once with his thumb, and set it beside the savings book. The miracle had begun, but Marcus's face did not change into victory. It changed into responsibility because now that the room had finally seen him, he had to decide what kind of man he would be with that recognition in his hands. The crowd did not clap after Daniel Carter relieved Linda Brooks of authority. They simply moved differently, slower, quieter, as if every person in the lobby had become aware of the floor beneath their shoes. The man in the navy suit stepped out of the private office without looking at anyone. The woman by the brochure stand folded her arms around her purse, not to protect it now, but to hold herself still. Behind the counter, Renee wiped one tear quickly with the back of her wrist before the internal reviewer asked her to preserve the service log, the queue history, and every transaction note from that morning. Linda stood beside her desk while her access badge was deactivated. Not dragged out, not shouted down, not made into a show. The system she had used to hide behind now moved around her with quiet precision. Tablet signatures, copied footage, sealed file envelopes, witness notes, and the printed record of every number she had thought no one would question. Marcus watched it all with Noah's hand in his. He did not smile. He did not point. He did not say, I told you so. When Linda passed him on her way to the side office, her eyes lifted for 1 second, full of embarrassment and something almost like anger because shame had nowhere else to go. Marcus could have given it back to her. Instead, he stepped aside so she could pass without brushing against his son. That was his last victory over her, and no one in the room had to name it. Daniel assigned another officer to review Marcus's folder at the counter, in the open, under the same lights where it had been dismissed. Page by page, the file became what it had always been, complete. The contract was valid. The income was documented. The payment history was clean. The loan officer's checklist had been right from the beginning. When the independent officer gave Marcus the preliminary approval form, he did not slide it like a favor. He placed it flat on the counter and turned it toward him with both hands. Mr. Reed, your application qualifies for approval pending final verification of the equipment invoice. That should have been said this morning. Marcus looked at the paper, then at Noah. The boy's eyes were bright, but he did not jump or shout. He only breathed out, long and shaky, like he had been holding something inside his small chest since they walked through the doors. Marcus signed where he was asked to sign, then closed the pen and set it down carefully. Thank you for reading it. Daniel heard the weight in that sentence. So did Evelyn. She stood beside her son now, her old savings book held against her chest, the red circle no longer looking like a strange mark on a forgotten thing. It looked like a witness. Daniel faced the lobby and spoke not to rescue his family name, but to make a record. Every manually delayed file from the past 12 months would be audited. Any customer denied without written cause would be contacted. Branch staff would be retrained under outside compliance review. Renee would be protected as an internal witness, not punished for telling the truth. And from that day forward, no customer could be refused, delayed, or redirected without a documented reason visible in the system. Evelyn listened, then turned to Marcus. You did not save me because I was important. Marcus shook his head. No, ma'am. That is why it mattered. The words settled over him in a way praise usually did not. He was used to being needed for what his hands could build, lift, repair, carry. He was not used to being honored for the quiet part of him that kept choosing decency when decency cost something. Evelyn reached down and placed the old savings book on the counter beside the bent ticket B42. My husband started that community program for people banks often refuse to see, she said. Widows, first-time workers, small contractors, people with more character than collateral. Her eyes moved to Noah. Somewhere along the way, we forgot. Daniel lowered his head slightly, not as a president performing regret, but as a son hearing his mother name a failure he could not delegate away. We'll restore it, he said. Evelyn did not answer quickly. Restore it for them, not for me. Marcus understood then that the miracle was not the approval form in his hand. It was not the preserved contract or the truck he might still be able to repair. It was the way a room that had measured him by dust and boots now had to measure itself by what it had almost done. Noah touched the old ticket on the counter with one finger. Dad, can we keep it? Marcus looked at Evelyn, who smiled. I think it belongs to both stories now. Marcus folded B42 once and tucked it into the front pocket of his lone folder. Not as proof that he had won, but as a reminder of the moment his son watched kindness become evidence. Near the doors, the afternoon light came through the glass in long pale rectangles. The bank was still the bank. The tile still smelled faintly of wax. The cameras still blinked above the lobby. But something had changed in the spaces between people. Customers spoke softer to tellers. The guard opened the door for an elderly man with a cane before anyone told him to. Renee looked Marcus in the eye when she thanked him, and he answered with a nod, giving her the dignity of not making her tears public. At the exit, Daniel offered his hand. Mr. Reed, I'm sorry it took proof for us to give you respect. Marcus shook it, firm and brief. Just make sure. The next person doesn't need a camera. Outside, Noah slipped his hand back into his father's calloused palm. Dad. Yeah, son. You were scared too, weren't you? Marcus looked across the parking lot at his old truck. At the dented door, the ladder rack, the life still waiting to be repaired one honest day at a time. Yes, he said. But being scared doesn't mean you stop being kind. They walked away without music, without applause, without anyone chasing them with a bigger reward. Behind them, on the counter, Evelyn's savings book rested open beside the copied service log, no longer a worn-out object to be pushed aside, but a quiet piece of truth that had waited years for the right hands to return it to the light.